They laughed when they saw him wheeling alone across the gravel, old, hunched, and in the way. A junior officer told him to move aside, saying he was blocking the view. He didn't answer. He just turned quietly, parked near the flagpole, and stared at the ground. No one noticed the faded metal on his chest. Not yet. But in 10 minutes, the honor guard would stop mid-formation, and every soldier on that field would rise. Welcome to Hidden Sparks. Before we continue, tell me in the Abbas comments, from which city in the world are you watching this video today? And if you believe moments like this deserve to be remembered, hit the subscribe button to support the channel. The base had been hosting Memorial Day ceremonies for decades, but this year felt different. There were more cameras, more uniforms, more polished boots on the parade ground. Rows of white chairs lined the gravel, each tagged for a specific family, regiment, or dignitary. In the center stood a raised platform draped in flags with an honor guard in full-dress uniform waiting to begin the formal salute. Most of the crowd had arrived early, young cadets in pressed blues, Gold Star families holding portraits, officers in suits. Everyone was where they were supposed to be, except for him. He came in from the side gate. No escort, no badge, just a quiet figure in a worn wheelchair, rolling slowly across the far side of the field, unnoticed by most, until the screech of his old wheels broke the rhythm of the morning silence. Some turned to glance, but quickly looked away. He wasn't wearing medals, no ribbons, just a khaki jacket creased at the elbows and a pair of polished black shoes that didn't match the fatigue pants tucked over his thin legs. His hands were aged, but steady as he worked the wheels forward. The gravel caught in the spokes, making it hard to move. Still, he didn't stop. He rolled past the families, past the rows of officers, past the staging tent, until a young lieutenant stepped toward him and raised a hand. "Sir, this section's reserved." The old man looked up. His face was calm, his eyes pale and clear. He met the officer's gaze without a word, nodded once, backed the chair with quiet precision, and made his way to the flagpole. He positioned himself off to the side, just beyond the official seating, in the sun, facing the colors. No shade, no cushion, just concrete and silence. No one knew his name. To most, he was just a man in the wrong seat. But a few noticed how he sat, back straight, shoulders set, hands folded in his lap, like he'd been here before, like he'd done this 1,000 times, but never from that chair. Cadet Ryan Wells hadn't planned on paying attention to anyone that morning. His assignment was simple: manage equipment near the ceremony perimeter and stay out of the way. It was his first Memorial Day event as part of active support detail, and like every young recruit, he was focused on looking sharp, doing everything by the book, and not drawing attention. But the man near the flagpole kept pulling at his focus. Something was off, not in a bad way, just off. The old man had arrived alone, rolling himself across the gravel with a kind of deliberate rhythm that didn't come from weakness, but habit. He didn't glance at anyone, didn't seek help. He kept his eyes forward, stopping just a few feet. From the main field, choosing the spot not randomly, but as if by memory. His posture was remarkable, back straight, hands still, shoulders squared. Even seated, he looked like someone who had spent years standing at attention. Most of the attendees barely noticed him. One junior officer had even asked him to reposition his chair, politely but firmly, assuming he was a lost civilian. The man had complied without a word, quietly adjusting and then settling near the base of the flagpole, where he hadn't moved since. Ryan kept glancing at him between tasks, curiosity growing. It wasn't just his posture, it was the way he didn't fidget, didn't look around, didn't check a phone. It was as if he was waiting for something very specific, and no one else was part of it. Then Ryan noticed a detail that froze him mid-step, a small metallic pin on the man's chest, dulled with age, but unmistakable. It wasn't decorative, it was historical, a combat infantryman badge, first issue, 1943. There weren't many of those still in circulation and fewer still attached to living men. Ryan narrowed his eyes. On the inside of the man's left sleeve, there was the ghost of an old unit patch, worn down and nearly faded to the thread. It was the outline of a sword and wings. Army Rangers. Ryan's heart ticked faster. Something about this didn't add up. He moved to the edge of the field to get a better view and quickly pulled up the attendance list on his phone. The man's face wasn't on it. No registered veteran under his age bracket. No public honoree matching that description. Ryan wasn't sure what made him do it, but he quietly circled to the back of the seating area and looked closer at the wheelchair. Etched into the back support frame, where a maintenance tag might go, was a small nameplate. Sergeant Thomas R. Mallory. Ryan blinked. That name, it rang a bell. He pulled up a search and within seconds found an archived article from a military heritage database. Staff Sergeant Thomas R. Mallory, 2nd Ranger Battalion, Omaha Beach, June 6, 1944. Listed as missing in action for 11 hours. Last seen crawling across the sand behind German obstacles, dragging 2 wounded men with him. He had survived the landing, been pulled from the rocks with 3 empty magazines, shrapnel in both legs, and refused evacuation until the last man was lifted out. Ryan swallowed. The article stated that Mallory had declined all public interviews. He had refused every appearance request for more than 60 years. According to the piece, his only known quote was from a debriefing transcript. "I went where they told me. I came back because I was lucky. That's it." The man in front of the flagpole hadn't moved. His eyes were still locked on the base of the pole, hands resting calmly in his lap, as if the gravel, the wind, and the ceremony hadn't even begun yet. Ryan felt his chest tighten. He looked around at the crowd, wondering how no one else saw it. This wasn't just a man who came to remember the fallen. This was one of them, still standing watch in his own way. He hadn't come for attention. He hadn't come to be recognized. But he had come to make sure the flag was raised right, to make sure no one forgot what it had cost. And in that moment, Ryan understood something he would carry for the rest of his life. Some men don't wear their stories on their sleeves. They carry them in silence. And when they sit still, they still command the room. The ceremony began like any other. A commanding officer took the podium and welcomed the crowd with rehearsed solemnity. The wind caught the edge of the flag as the color guard prepared to raise it in perfect sync with the national anthem. Buglers stood at attention. Cadets lined the perimeter in full dress, hands behind their backs, faces trained forward. Rows of chairs shifted as families settled in. The moment was official, ceremonial, clean, controlled, but something broke that rhythm. It started with a glance. One of the honor guard members, a senior sergeant with 2 tours behind him, turned his head ever so slightly as he marched into position. His eyes caught movement by the flagpole, not dramatic, just presence, and then he stopped, not abruptly, not enough to disrupt the line, but enough that his partner adjusted. The officer on stage noticed it too. He paused mid-sentence, glanced toward the edge of the platform, and followed their gaze. His expression didn't change, but his tone shifted. His words trailed off. Something was happening that wasn't in the program. A moment later, a senior master chief, standing off to the side, moved forward, slow and deliberate. He walked past the cadets, past the guests, straight toward the man in the chair. Ryan watched it unfold from a few yards away. Breath caught in his throat. The Master Chief stopped 2 steps in front of the old man. He looked down, nodded once, then slowly raised his hand to a sharp salute. The old man didn't move at first. Then, quietly, steadily, he raised his right hand and returned the salute. It was clean, flawless, not a tremor. Silence swept across the grounds. The crowd didn't understand yet, but they felt it. Something had shifted. The air grew still. The chatter stopped. The movement faded, one by one. Heads began to turn toward the man, no one had acknowledged before. Then came the voice from the stage. The officer commanding the ceremony stepped forward to the microphone and cleared his throat. His tone was different, now lower, reverent, personal. Before we begin, it's come to our attention that a member of one of this nation's most sacred units is here with us today, a man whose actions on June 6, 1944, helped shape the very freedom this flag represents. He paused. The only sound was the wind brushing the edge of the fabric above them. Staff Sergeant Thomas Mallory, 2nd Ranger Battalion, Omaha Beach. Gasps echoed across the crowd. People turned in their seats. A few stood up. The buglers lowered their instruments, and then, without a word of command, the entire honor guard stepped back, turned as one, and faced the man by the flagpole. They raised their arms in perfect unison, saluting, not a general, not a politician, not a headline name, but a man who had come alone, uninvited, unknown, and sat in silence. Cadet Ryan Wells stood at attention, shoulders locked, chest tight, unable to blink, and then it spread, from the front rows of officers to the cadets lining the field, from the staff to the visitors. One by one, every man and woman stood. The only figure still seated was the one who had earned it most. The flag began to rise, and for the first time in his life, Ryan understood what it meant for a flag to have weight. Not in fabric or pole, but in memory, and for just a few seconds there were no speeches, no instructions, no rank, just respect, raw, unanimous, wordless, the kind reserved for men who never asked for it. The ceremony resumed, but not as it had begun. There was no music during the raising of the flag, no announcements, no applause, only silence, pure and heavy, holding the field like fog. Even the youngest cadets stood taller, stiller. No one looked at their phones, no one whispered. Every set of eyes pointed to the colors rising slowly into the morning light, and then back to the man in the wheelchair who never once looked away. He didn't wave, didn't nod, when the last note of the bugle faded and the flag reached full. Masked, he placed his right hand slowly over his heart and held it there, not for attention, not for protocol, but for the names that weren't there to see it. Then, without a word, he lowered his hand, turned his chair away from the crowd, and began to wheel himself toward the gravel path. He didn't wait for the program to end. Didn't approach the stage. He simply exited the way he came in, through the side gate, unnoticed, unaccompanied, exactly as he had intended. Ryan Wells broke from his post. He knew it was against protocol, but no one stopped him. He followed the path until he caught up just outside the perimeter fence. The veteran had paused under a patch of shade, adjusting the strap of the small pack clipped to his chair. Ryan stepped forward, heart pounding. "Sir," he said quietly, I saw your name." The old man didn't turn fully. He just looked over his shoulder, eyes clear, almost amused. "You did?" he asked, voice dry but not unkind. Ryan nodded. "You were at Omaha." The man held his gaze for a moment, then gave a faint shrug, one of many. "Why didn't you stay?" A pause, then softly. "Because the flag went up. That was the mission." Ryan didn't know what to say. The veteran glanced down at his lap, then offered something with 2 fingers. A folded patch, worn, frayed, the colors nearly gone. It read simply, "Ranger." He handed it to Ryan, who took it like it was made of glass. The man turned his chair again, wheeled forward into the morning sun, and vanished down the sidewalk before anyone else could follow. Ryan stood there a long time. He wouldn't see the man again. None of them would, but that year, and every year after, the Honor Guard saved 1 seat at every Memorial Day event. A folding chair, front row, no name, just a simple tag clipped to the back that said, "Ranger." Seated in spirit. They never found out where he came from. The records matched, yes, the name, the unit, the year. But the address listed on the tag had been vacant for decades. No next of kin, no VA record updated, just a line in a registry and a memory burned into every cadet who saw him that day. The following year, when the folding chair was placed at the front of the ceremony, no one had to explain it. Even new recruits understood. The presence was still there, stronger somehow than any name read aloud that morning. It wasn't the patch he gave Ryan that changed the tone of the base. It was the silence he left behind. Silence that commanded more than any order barked across a field. A silence that demanded better posture, cleaner boots, sharper salutes. And from that day forward, when the honor guard trained, they told the story, not with ceremony, not in the AWAS manual, but in the pause they held at full attention just before the flag rose, 1 second longer, for him. And now I'll ask you, have you ever known someone like him? Someone who never asked to be honored but deserved the world's attention? If you have, write their name in the comments. Let this space be more than a video. Let it be a place where silence speaks and memories stand tall. And if stories like this matter to you, hit the subscribe button to support Hidden Sparks, because some men vanish without applause, but they should never disappear without being remembered.